On the gun control debate, they keep trotting out children as though we should be taking policy prescriptions from 7-year-olds. You know, it used to be in this country that when a president of the United States said, I'm dealing with this issue because, for example, my 13-year-old daughter cares about nuclear disarmament, we laughed them. We laughed at them. We laughed them out of the public sphere. Jimmy Carter comes to mind. When President Obama walks out there with a bunch of 7-year-olds and says, I'm doing it because these 7-year-olds, they care about gun control, give me a break. I mean, if we're taking our policy prescriptions from kids who can't spell either policy or prescription, we have a problem. A few years ago, Princeton University did a study, and what they found was, this is when the SATs were out of 1600, so back in my day. When the SATs were out of 1600, Princeton University found that black folks were being given a bonus of 230 points on average by the top universities in the country. Asians were being penalized by 50 points. But that's fair, because Asians were obviously beneficiaries of Asian privilege. Because our Asian founders wrote an Asian constitution to benefit Asian people. In case you were wondering, that's why our constitution is in Korean.
Why exactly do you think a first trimester fetus has moral value?
Okay, so a first trimester fetus has moral value because whether you consider it a potential human life or a full-on human life, it has more value than just a cluster of cells. If left to its natural processes, it will grow into a baby. So the real question is, where do you draw the line? So you're going to draw the line at the heartbeat, because it's very hard to draw the line at the heartbeat. There are people who are adults who are alive because of a pacemaker. They need some sort of outside force generating their heartbeat. Okay, are you going to do it based on brain function? Okay, well, what about people who are in a coma? Should we just kill them? Right? The problem is, anytime you draw any line other than the inception of the child, you end up drawing a false line that can also be applied to people who are adults. So either human life has intrinsic value or it doesn't. I think we both agree that adult human life has intrinsic value. Can we start from that premise?
I believe that sentience is what gives something moral value, not necessarily being a human alone.
Okay, because, when you're asleep, can I stab you?
I'm still considered sentient when I'm asleep.
Okay, if you are in a coma from which you may awake, can I stab you?
Well then, no. I guess not. I mean,
I'm glad you answered that, because I have no interest in actually murdering you.
But that's still potential sentience, and it's still a potential.
I agree. It is potential sentience. You know what else is potential sentience? Being a fetus. Why is your protocol to keep me specifically out?
What country protocol? Soviet Union or United States?
Do you want to step over here to decide?
Well, I'm happy to do it right here if you'd like. I mean, I don't think this needs to be private.
The bottom line is it's private property. Okay, proper procedures weren't followed, and you're not going to be allowed to.
So am I to understand that if I take 3 steps forward, you will attempt to have me arrested?
If you create a problem and you will not, leave the campus, yes.
Okay, so just to be clear, if I attempt to enter that hall right there and sit down just to listen to somebody speak, or if I attempt to ask a question or to engage in free speech, you will have me arrested.
At this point, yes, sir.
Okay, then I'm glad that we've clarified that situation. I'm also glad that in a city, I mean, we clearly have great security. I'm glad in a city that has some 4,000 shootings to this date, you have 30 members of security just for a 5'9", 165 Jewish guy. I come bearing gifts, particularly for the social justice warriors. So I keep hearing that you fellas, that you party people, that you want to, you're wearing around these safety pins. So I brought a whole pack of safety pins just for you. And then to accompany those, I brought the diapers you ought to be wearing. So you can pin that up. You self-indulgent, pathetic children who can't handle anybody who has an opposing point of view. Yeah, you're real strong. You're real tough. So strong and so tough, you have to stand behind the security and the police officers that you're bashing every single day.
So I wanted to get your take on humor tactics and the Milo incident, if you want to talk about that.
So you'll have to remind me, because Milo's a provocateur. So which
Black
one was
Lives
this?
Matter protest, the feminist group painting red blood on their face to represent menstrual blood and all that
Oh,
other crap.
yeah. Well, I mean, let's put it this way. Call me crazy, but I find painting menstrual blood on your face off-putting. It's just not my thing. I mean, I think there's a reason why many of these women will die single and alone. But don't worry, they'll have their 83 cats to comfort them.
Do you feel that a lot of your speech could incite the same kind of violence? And what I mean by inciting violence is encouraging the same people who believe in, like, your transphobic beliefs.
So the idea that I am transphobic, for example. This is a bizarre kind of attack in the sense that I don't know that I've ever exhibited phobia of trans people. I'm not afraid of trans people.
Well, transphobia is more along the lines of prejudice against the transphobic.
So I actually think that your first characterization was right. I think that transphobia is really disagreement with the basic principle that the trans community is trying to purvey, which is that people's sex is malleable, that people can move from male to female, and that it is my job, objectively, to now call them the name they wish to be called, and to teach my children that men can be women and women can be men. I fundamentally disagree with that point. Now, with that said, is everybody in the United States entitled to the same rights? Of course, but your right does not extend to forcing me to call you what you want me to call you. That's not the way this works. That violates my freedom of speech. So, in interpersonal relationships, if I were out to dinner with a trans person, would I make a point of noting their proper biological sex? No, because that would be impolite. When I'm talking about the general principle of is a man a woman or is a woman a man, the answer is I will say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman and a he is a he and a she is a she. And if I'm in a public debate with somebody, I will say the same thing.
Fuck white supremacy! This is all university! Fuck white supremacy! Get out! Yo, your baby needs to get out!
So what is your formal education background? Because I guess a lot of people don't know what your undergraduate degree was in.
So I was at UCLA in political science and then Harvard Law School.
Okay. So you don't have, you wouldn't consider yourself an expert in sociology?
I mean, I don't consider sociology a particularly expert field, but go ahead.
What I'm getting at is that you're not considered an expert in sociology, psychology, gender studies, lesbian dance theory, many of these things that you've brought up tonight.
If you want to take issue with the argument, I would urge you not to use the argument from authority, which is somebody has a PhD by their name, they know what they're talking about. Right. No, that's a dumb argument.
What I'm trying to get at is that the fact that do you have any other further education in any of these topics or any of these fields of study?
I don't need a 7-year degree in sociology to know bullshit when I hear it.
And granted, that's your opinion.
Right, because I'm here, yeah, giving it.
That would mean that you're also offering kind of an unqualified opinion on a lot of these topics.
See, again, you're just making the argument from authority. I don't think slapping a PhD from Ferris State next to your name makes you an expert in all things in the field in which you propose to speak. Okay, the fact is that either my argument's good or my argument's bad. Citing to my credentials is a really bad way of making an argument. There's something I like, and it's called science. And science suggests that if you have not a single cell in your body without a Y chromosome, except for your sperm cells, and if you still have all your appendages, and if you still have your twig and berries and all the rest of it, but you call yourself a woman, no. No, and this goes back to my feeling that your subjective view of yourself is completely irrelevant to me. I don't care what you think you are, I just care what you are.
At the end of the speech, you talked about how you preach decency and you just encourage everyone to be a mensch. But in the middle of your speech, and you can call me out on being a liberal snowflake or whatever about my feelings, but then you, in the middle of your speech, I think this was hate speech, you made fun of transgenders.
Well, I made fun of one person who grabbed me by the back of the neck and threatened me with violence, to be fair.
I mean, yes, but also Caitlyn Jenner, and you seem to be making, You were clearly making jokes at the expense of transgender people. So my question is, where do you draw the line between being a mensch and clearly offending people? Like, where do you draw the line?
Okay, so for me, if I coldly and clearly state a fact and you're offended by the fact, that's not me being responsible for offending you, that's me saying a fact and you being offended. As far as me making jokes about Zoe Tur, my general rule is that if somebody grabs me by the back of the neck and threatens me with violence on national television, I have the right to make fun of them. I was invited to talk about how was Caitlyn Jenner a hero or not? This is when ESPN was giving Caitlyn Jenner the Hero Award. Rather than soldiers who had had limbs blown off and continued their athletic careers, right? No, Caitlyn Jenner was a hero for being an extraordinarily wealthy white man with a mental disorder. The producer of the Dr. Drew Show, who happens to be a former producer, he told me, on Jerry Springer, decided that it would be a wise idea to have on, to debate me, a guy by the name of Zoe Tur, who is a transgender woman. And so we're seated next to each other, and this debate starts, and everybody's talking about, is Caitlyn Jenner a hero, or is Caitlyn Jenner not a hero? And finally they come to me, and I said, I don't understand why we are engaging in mass delusion. All right, we all know Caitlyn Jenner's a man, and we're sitting here pretending Caitlyn Jenner's a woman. So what happened is I said this, and this transgender guy sitting next to me, he grabs me by the back of the neck on national TV and says, if you don't cut that out, you'll go home in an ambulance, or I'll send you home in an ambulance. Which is weird, because ambulances don't go home.
Under capitalism, when you, as the owner of the factory, you give me a wage. The wage could be $7.25, it could be $15, it could be whatever an hour. Right? But you give me a wage. All the additional profit above the made from selling the pencils or whatever good you produce above what is reinvested into the company ultimately goes to you or the investors, those who own shares in the means of production. Under socialism, those people are the workers, and the example I give, again, is cooperative enterprise.
No, those are the people who are investing the risk. So if they carry the risk, then they get the benefit. The owner of the factory carries the risk, therefore he gets the benefit. The workers in the company you mentioned, if that company were to go bankrupt, they would carry the risk as well as the benefit. If the company goes bankrupt, and this guy has to pay off all of his debts, the worker may lose his job, but he's not the one who's going to incur the debt of having gone bankrupt. If you incur risk, then you're the one who pays the downside. The worker does not pay the downside. Okay, it is the investor who pays the downside, who invested in all the machinery, who sunk millions of dollars into making your labor productive. Because guess what? Your labor is without that machinery. Gunk. Nothing. You don't have a pencil to put together, you don't got the wood, you don't got the paint, you don't got the rubber, you don't got the metal, you got nothing. Right? You're sitting there, standing outside, twiddling your thumbs. It required somebody to invest, who do you think put more in? The guy who spent millions of dollars buying all the machinery, leasing the place, making sure there was a management structure, doing the LLC formation, making sure all the tax code was in compliance, or you standing outside because